Join us as we visit the Isle of Raasay Distillery off the coast of Isle of Skye. Welcome back to another episode that I will spend hours editing and yet only 10 people will watch. But that's okay, because today is a labor of love as I'm going to be sharing about our visit to the Isle of Raasay and the Isle of Raasay Distillery, which are two of our favorite parts of our road trip to the Isle of Skye. I've been wrestling with best how to break this video up, whether I just do two separate videos, one for the Isle of Raasay and another for the distillery. But since getting to the island is such a huge part of the experience of going to the distillery, I'm just going to roll it all into one. But if you want to skip ahead to just the distillery part, you can scrub ahead to the 3 minutes and 7-second mark or hit the chapter link down below. I'll be honest, we kind of went to the island flying a bit blind. We were staying on the Isle of Skye for 4 days and knew we wanted to visit a distillery, but we wanted to try something off the beaten path and not as busy as the more popular distilleries on Skye. And so we were lucky enough to find Raasay. When we booked, we knew there was a distillery on the island, but we really didn't know much else. So our plan was just to book a ferry, do a distillery tour for a couple hours, and then come right back on the ferry. But we quickly fell in love and ended up making a whole day of it. The ferry we took was from Sconser, which is on the southeast of Skye, and it was about 30 pounds round trip for 2 adults, one 12-year-old, and our rental car on the ferry. But a quick highlight before the ferry was the Noost, which was located at the ferry dock on the Isle of Skye side in Sconser. It's a little lockside cafe with coffee, tea, and food that I would definitely plan on stopping in at before hopping on the ferry. Everything we had was really good, and I wish for the life of me I could remember the name of the person working, as she was so nice and kind. But she gave us a ton of great recommendations for the rest of our trip and really got us excited about our visit across to Raasay. We rented a car for our visit, so we were able just to drive it right onto the ferry, but you can walk on as well. The whole ferry ride was less than 15 minutes and was perfect as it gave you some of our favorite views looking back at the Isle of Skye. The Isle of Raasay is one of Scotland's quieter spots. It is a long, narrow island tucked between the west coast of the Scottish mainland and the Isle of Skye. It's less than 30 square miles, just short of 14 miles long, and only home to around 180 people. I highly recommend taking a whole day and checking out the rest of the island before or after your visit to the distillery. We went afterwards and it really helped bring context to some of the history we learned during the distillery tour. We hunted for ammonites on the beach after learning where they were found, visited the ruins of Brockwell Castle, and shared a one-lane road with hundreds of sheep. If you want to escape the packed crowds on Skye, you will feel like you have the whole island to yourself if you take a bit of a drive. So let's get into the best part of our experience to the Isle of Raasay, and that is the distillery. I'm not sure how any review of the distillery can begin or end without talking about Steve, who was our guide for the day. I have never been much of a fan of Scotch, as I grew up in the American South and really loved bourbon. But after an afternoon with Steve, not only did I become a fan of the distillery, but I became a fan of Scotch. If I was smart, I would just shut up and play nothing but videos of Steve giving history, dropping knowledge, and explaining the science, kind of like this.
Is the base product of whiskey. And malted barley is barley that you've tricked into germinating. And what you do is you soak it in water. And when you soak it in water, the sprouting process creates all the sugars and starches and enzymes.
Or like this.
Basically, this is a big kettle. If you think of your kettle at home, when you boil your kettle, you get steam, water vapor. But when we boil the alcohol, because alcohol boils off at a lower temperature than water, we first collect alcohol vapor.
But instead, I'll do my best to sum up what we learned about the distillery and the Scotch making process, which I learned from Steve. The main ingredient in their Scotch is 100% Scottish grown barley with special releases that contain 100% local Raasay barley. They take that barley, it's malted by soaking it in water, it's allowed to germinate, then it's dried, before that gets turned into a mash that pulls out the sugar. From there, it starts the fermentation process before getting distilled in huge copper pot stills. Going into the still kind of concentrates the alcohol and gets it ready to go into the cask where it then matures. By Scottish law, the Scotch then needs to rest for 3 years, but many rest a lot longer than that. And then from there, the wood of the cask is going to start imbuing all kinds of flavors into the whiskey. So you may get things like spices, vanilla, all sorts of things, depending on how long it sits in that cask. The big thing we learned from Steve is the passion behind the distillery and really leaning into the island's history and their particular place to help inform its values and how they run things. Even the bottle has a cutout impression of an ancient ammonite fossil that was found on the island. It's one of Scotland's newest distilleries, only opening its doors in 2017, but already they have won countless awards and gotten recognition all across Scotland for their craftsmanship and innovation. Throughout the tour, Steve was overflowing with passion about the whiskey and the island and how they all come together. The best part was obviously the tasting room. After we learned the history and context for what all went into our drams, Steve explained how best to enjoy the Scotch, how to open it up with water, and the different flavor profiles. They also produce a Scottish gin on the site, which you can also taste on the tour.
But when you've got it up to the light, okay, turn it up like that, ignore the liquid and look at the glass. And when you do that, you're going to see there's a film form.
Since our visit, they have opened 5 luxury cabins overlooking the distillery to go along with 6 suites on site. There is a beautiful gift shop and a bar and restaurant. Honestly, and I say this without a hint of exaggeration, this day was the best day of our 2-week road trip to Scotland. The distillery experience was obviously amazing, but spending an afternoon exploring the island was just perfection. For a couple other recommendations, swing by the little grocery on the island or grab lunch at the Raasay House Hotel. After 4 days on the Isle of Skye with the crowds, the Isle of Raasay was about as good as it gets. Our only regret is we didn't stay overnight or longer. But for the love of God, can someone give Steve a raise or a promotion, please?